Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CNC with Dave show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some troubleshooting tips and also be talking about tiling and V-Carve. That was a question I think came up last week. So we're going to be trying to cover that a little bit too. But before we get started with the questions and all, we will go through the introductions. And I'm going to start with who's on my left here, Becca. You want to start us off with the introductions?
I always forget to unmute myself. I'm Becca Miller, and I built my own CNC from Dave's Plants, and I'm over on Facebook with my name, Becca Miller. That's it.
Okay, thanks for being here tonight, Becca. Next,
Sure.
we have Juan.
Hi guys, I'm Juan Lopez. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and you can find me here on YouTube under G-Code 1 Design, also on Facebook and on Instagram. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Okay, thanks for being here, Juan. You sound like you still got a little bit of the crud going on there.
I do.
Yeah, well, thanks for hanging tough with us, buddy.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Next, we have Mark.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Lindsay, and you can find me here on YouTube, down in the comments section, and over on Facebook under this name, Mark Lindsay. I will also be monitoring the chat tonight for a while anyway, for your questions, comments, concerns, demands for payment, whatever else. And when I can remember that I'm on Instagram, I'm also on Instagram. So thanks for having me, Dave.
Thanks for being here, Mark. Next, we have Mike.
Hey, how's it going? Mike Mertzke Custom Woodworking. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, MySpace, wherever.
All right, thanks for being here tonight, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
And lastly, we have Peter.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Peter Pasquallo. You'll find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name of CNC Nuts. And I'm coming from New Zealand. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thanks for being here, Peter. We appreciate you spending part of your Sunday afternoon with us. Okay, we're going to talk about some troubleshooting tips. I've seen a lot of stuff lately on Facebook. Folks having some different kind of issues, and it's pretty, from what I can tell, it's pretty much basic stuff. So we want to start out with roll tide, Jim Johnson. I see him over in the chat. Alabama won big again tonight. So so we want to talk about some of the basic troubleshooting tips, because a lot of times when people have trouble with stuff and they'll be scratching their head and trying to figure out what it is, and it's a lot of times it's really something very simple. One of the issues I saw, I can't remember who it was, Mark, and maybe you can refresh my memory if you know who it was, but somebody posted some pictures of, actually it was a video of their machine moving, and it was hanging up right around in the middle or something like that. I don't recall who that was, but
I don't recall either.
But at any rate, a lot of the times it's just, like I said, it's something very simple. And I think Mark made this comment, if I recall, to that video, is when you're lining, and I'm talking about the plywood type CNC machines, whether it's one of the really old sidewinders that I did, or the Gatton CNC that I have now, or really any kind of CNC for that matter. When you're running that lead screw through there, you need to make sure you try to get everything lined up as concentric as possible. When building the plywood machines, I always just use clamps to fasten the motor mounts and the bearing mounts on the other end, and that way I can, once I get the lead screw in there and get it fired up and running, I can run it back and forth, and the thing will kind of self-align. If it's out the least little bit, it's going to bind or give you a little funny noise or something. So you can kind of just use clamps to hold those on. Don't screw them in yet. You make sure you get everything lined up. And also, I always like to put a little dab of lithium grease on there, white lithium grease. Other people use maybe WD-40 or, different kinds of things, but it doesn't hurt to put, a little something on there. You don't really usually when I build one, I put it on there when I'm first breaking it in, and I don't ever put any more on there after that, because once you run it back and forth, it gets all down in those teeth. It gets blobbed up around the Acme nut, and I usually don't bother putting any more on there. But that's one of the common things I've seen people having some problems with, posting problems on Facebook saying they're having trouble getting it to run. And like I said, it's usually not anything electrical or in your settings in Mach 3. It's usually something mechanical. Something's not lined up properly. 99% of the time, that's what it is. Let's see, what other kind of problems have we seen on Facebook, Mark? Do you know?
Well, kind of to pick up where you left off on that. In a previous life, I was a slot machine mechanic for about 15 years. And no, there's no magic switch that'll make the machine win, by the way. In fact, the only way to make money on slot machines is to own it and let other people put their money in it. But that's beside the point. And the rule that we basically used was divide and conquer. Once you can eliminate one problem, you can generally start to narrow it down into other problems. If you're having a situation where the CNC is constantly making a noise or stalling at one certain area, take a look first of all at your lead screws. Are they bent? Is there anything obvious there? I put in fact,
actually, if I could interrupt you a second,
go ahead.
They should be checking the lead screw before they ever stick it in there. Lay it on the table and roll it around. You don't want to stick it in there and then have it stalling and find out that that's what it was. But it's easiest to check that lead screw before you ever put it in there.
That's true, but if you have a little shop like mine, I mean, like I had a rake fall over and the handle smacked the lead screw before I got the motor mounts put on. So, things happen in little shops. Another thing is it's kids especially like to see those shiny lead screws and reach up and grab a hold of them. I can't tell you how many times I've said, no, you got to back away from that. You can't grab that. So things happen, but look for obvious damage or something that's not right. I posted a video over on my channel about putting slippage marks where on the couplers, where the coupler attaches to the lead screw, and then on the other end where the motor shaft goes into the coupler. I use typewriter correction fluid, but you could use a little drop of paint, model paint, or just even a silver Sharpie or something like that. It doesn't keep it from slipping, but it will let you know just at a glance if that coupler is slipped on that lead screw. Just little things like that. So if you can eliminate the simple, obvious things right from the get-go, then you can focus on the more complex. And anything at all you can do that will eliminate something, whether it be just lubing the lead screw before you put it into the lead nut for the first time, it's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, that's an excellent point about the paint or whiteout or whatever it was you used for the to check that. And as long as I've been doing this, I never have done that, and I finally had to, I've got probably, I don't know, somewhere over 200 hours on that one machine that I used to cut the kits. And I finally had to check, I thought, well, I better check it because I hadn't checked it in a long time. And actually, a couple of the couplers were starting to loosen up a little bit. So, and if I'd have had those marks on there, of course, I still haven't put them on there. Yeah. I'd have to go find some whiteout somewhere. But that's an excellent way to be able to look at a glance and see if something's slipping. And you know, we talked about this, I think maybe last week or a week before, whenever. That's another common problem too, is when you're running a machine that has two motors slaved together, you know, like in my machines, it's the Y-axis. Mark, it may be the X on yours. But you know, if it starts getting kind of trying to rack a little bit, and you know, that's probably what it is. Probably one of those couplings is slipping and the other one's not. And that'll, you know, it doesn't have to slip, but just a little bit. And then once it starts getting out of whack, then it'll start hanging and stalling the motors and stuff like that. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and as I say, it doesn't prevent anything, but it ding dong sure will let you know at a glance if this is a problem or not.
Yeah.
You know, and actually I got that from when I was in the Army, working on helicopters. There is a special product you can buy if you want to spend money. It's called Torque Seal, and it's called an inspection lacquer. And you put a little dot where a bolt meets a washer, and you can see if either one of those is turning. And but it doesn't have to be any kind of a special product. Just anything that you can see from a distance to see if those two pieces have moved in relationship to one another. And it's quick and easy, and it takes just a few seconds to put on, and you probably have the stuff to do it right now in your junk drawer. So.
Right.
I always used fingernail polish.
That'll work.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
What color did you use, Russ?
A bright red.
I figured you for the hot pink.
Oh no, it's fire engine red for him.
It was a bright red. But yeah, I come in on the tail end of the conversation, but I get what y'all talking about marking things like that. But yeah, I always, anytime I had a situation where I had a bolt problem and I wanted to make sure it stayed tight for cause of vibration, I just painted the edge with a fingernail polish, and then because it dries really, really fast, like whiteout. Whiteout's a good idea. I never thought about whiteout myself, but it dries really fast, and then you can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, and while we got the camera on you, Russ, since you and the other Russ came in after we were already started, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? You know, we'll pretend nobody knows who you are. You can introduce yourself and tell them.
I'm Russ Clarity, and if you want to find me, all you've got to do is type in Simply Wooden Creations into Google, and it'll pop up all my website, everywhere, Twitter, everything. Just type in Simply Wooden Creations into Google.
Okay. Thanks for being here tonight, Russ. And now let's talk with the other Russ real quick. Russ Meadows, you want to plug yourself a little bit?
Well, let's see. I'm Russ Meadows, like you say, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and hopefully pretty soon on YouTube under Rusty Nails Woodshop. And I am the better looking Russ. I don't care what he says.
Well, that may be debatable, but anyway, I saw somebody in the chat. Actually, I think it was over in the chat on Russ Clarity's show that somebody was wanting a Russ Meadows CNC update. Can we get that real quick?
Okay. You might have a laugh at this, but the other night I got the X and Y and Z axis working. They were moving, doing everything I wanted them to do. So I got a wild hair in me, and I loaded up a little batch of G-code and started watching the screen on Mach 3, and was watching where he shows you where it's cutting it out. You can see an image of it. So I was watching that, and all of a sudden, the was all the way bottomed out, and it came loose from the motor, the shaft. And I said, well, crap, I guess I did that one wrong. Back apart and put it all back together again, and I'll be good to go. You understand what I told you?
Yeah, that's
well,
what we were just
so far,
about, making sure you got the couplers tight.
I did.
Maybe,
I thought I did, but
maybe you can get some of that hot red, or what was it, fire engine red nail polish from Russ, and put a mark on your coupler there. And
Oh man, it come completely separated from inside the coupler. The motor's up there in the shaft. I can see the shaft, and the lead screw is down. That's all crap. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Like the back of my hand when I'm done.
That's kind of the point.
I'm
That's
close.
that's why we call these DIY kits.
Yeah, I'm closer now than ever was.
A little
Yeah.
white
That's
out.
what I want to know.
We're good. Good. I'm glad you're getting close.
All right.
That was my Christmas challenge project I was looking at.
Okay. Well, good. Good. You'll get it. You've got time. We're only day 2 into the Christmas challenge, so you got plenty of time yet. I want to talk about another little problem I've been seeing, and some of you may have seen the pictures I posted yesterday on Facebook about the little issue I had, and it was kind of funny to me to see all the different comments that people put on there, what they thought it was, and it's doing this or that and everything. I had a little issue with my Z-axis where basically it just kind of started working intermittently, which, as you know, with the Z-axis, that's not a good thing. And when I finally cut it off and went to check the wiring, and I don't know if you can see this. This is the plug that the Molex connectors, and you can see how burnt looking that is in there.
Oh yeah.
And of course I had, a lot of people saying, oh, well, it must have come apart, or, must have did this or that. And actually it didn't come apart. In fact, I had a heck of a time getting it apart. But one thing I will caution anybody really that's using these Xylotech's kit with these kind of connectors, when you're running a CNC router, especially if you're running one like I've got over 200 hours on that one there, believe it or not, it gets really dusty in there. And this thing was packed full of dust. And I had kind of the same issue happen on the X-axis on my machine out in the shop one time. And it was the same thing. The axis would just miss a little and lose some steps. And what it is you get so much dust in here that it doesn't make a good connection. And, of course, all it has to do is miss it for just a second and you lost some steps and then everything's goes haywire. But yeah, this thing, it kind of pretty much melted itself together, and it was just had a bunch of dust in it. And because it was on the Z axis and the wire goes behind the gantry, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. I never really looked at it. And, but then of course, when it messed up, and you can probably guess how I fixed it, because here's the connector in my hand. So I just took some wire cutters and cut the plug end off of the motor and the other plug end off of the wiring coming out of the drive box, and just took some good old electrical tape and wire strippers and threw it together so I could finish the run. I'll probably fix it up a little better, but it's kind of it's kind of just jury rigged together right now, but it's working fine. So the motor wasn't hurt at all or anything, but it was just, you can't let a lot of dust get inside these things, and it will get inside these. What I did on the one out at my old machine, after I realized that that's what the problem was, because I noticed the plug was starting to turn a little brown or tan looking where it was, and that's what it's doing, is getting that dust in there and stinking it up. So I just, took it, blew it all out, put it back together, made sure it was in there good, and then I took some tape and wrapped around it so that the dust can't get in it. So, but that's all it was.
We thought maybe you were starting another side business, that you were going to make your Dave's homemade welders.
Yeah, this was pretty much soldered itself together. And even some of I don't know if I can hold that still enough where you can see it if I turn it, but there's actually you can see some wires where it melted through the installation of the wires right there. But
Have you given any thought to like sealing those things up, like silicone on them, so that dust can't get into them?
well, no, I like I said, the one outside, I've just taken some tape and kind of wrapped around it, so that it's covered up and that keep the dust out. I mean, actually, they're kind of nice because if you ever do have a motor go bad, it's nice that you can just pop them apart and put another motor on there, and it plugs right in.
Maybe some of that shrink wrap.
That's what I was going to say.
Plastic
the heat
shrink
shrink.
wrap. Yeah.
Yeah, get some of that, and a heat gun or hair dryer or something would probably be good. But
Yeah, because you can cut those off pretty easily if you need to change it out and you haven't done anything permanent with it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going back to think of a way of sealing it. But because now I know this is not the same, but my scroll saw on the DeWalt's, they're off and on switches. It's right up top, and they're not dust proof at all. So if you leave those exposed to the dust.
Yeah. I'd heard so much about that switch from you and everybody else that I know that has the DeWalt 788 that's before I ever even turned mine on, that's what I did is, raise that switch up and then covered it up with some clear tape so that the dust won't get in.
Mine's been from the day I bought mine. Mine's had tape over it, and I've never had a problem with it. So, that's why I was thinking of a way. But I guess good old electrical tape around it too, if you didn't have anything else, would work.
I have.
Yeah, well, I was like one part away from finishing that nest, and how it is when you're running the job and you go, okay, I should be done with this at this time, and so I kind of had my day all scheduled out, and then I had that little hiccup, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna cut that sucker off, and and I was first I just wanted to wire it up before I even put the tape on it. I just kind of twisted the wires all together and kept them separate just to make sure it was still working. Of course, the motor was still working fine. Those things are, workhorse. So.
The sandwich.
What was that, Russ?
I said it was a good thing you weren't in the house eating a sandwich.
Yeah. When I think about, there's times sometimes I'll walk all the way around to the back and get in my other shop and do stuff, and I might be gone 30 minutes. So it's weird because every time it's messed up, which hasn't been often, but whenever it does, I happen to be standing right there. So it's just lucky, I guess. So it's surprised I haven't burned my garage down. But yeah, I do like to get it running, and sometimes I'll be all the way at the other end of the house working on the computer doing something. But I always keep the TV and all the other noise down so that I can hear that drone of the router, and then I can listen for a change in the tone. So
I've had a couple of people over
to Walmart.
What was that, Mike?
So you're saying I shouldn't be taking trips to Walmart while my machine's running?
Well, you got a GarageWorks CNC. You're probably okay there.
Okay.
We've had a couple of people over in the chat asking about dielectric grease on those connections and maybe sealing afterwards. What do you think of that idea?
I suppose that would. I've had some people. I noticed somebody on the Facebook thing posted, because I was showing a picture of this thing, and they go, "Oh yeah, those aren't very good. You should probably use a different kind of connector." And I don't really have a problem with a connector. They work fine. I've had that other machine for 10 years, so I know it's not a problem with a connector. It's just you got to keep the dust out of them, folks.
Yes.
Yeah. You got to keep.
It's the same thing with a lot of different types of motors. The same thing with the router. People don't realize how much pitch and resin and if you're cutting plywood or MDF, adhesives are in the wood, and when they get hot, they turn into concrete, flammable concrete, but concrete nonetheless. Take a look at your router bit after several months of use on it, and you'll see what I mean. The stuff just builds up on router bits.
I wish I could get several months of use. I get maybe a few days out of mine.
Well,
so much, but
clean them up, and they might surprise you.
Well, I do try. I have several, so I have to rotate them out because all that plywood that I cut, with all that glue and stuff in it. It doesn't take long to
Yeah.
dull them out. You just start watching for the fuzzies. When the fuzzies start showing up, it's time to change the bit out.
Yeah, but like cleaning saw, look at the teeth on your saw blades right there behind where that carbide tip is welded on. You'll see a bunch of crud caked up back there, and it just a little bit of heat and it just bonds on there to where you got to use like oven cleaner or something to get it off. So up in that connector, it doesn't have to get super hot. I could see it, turning into flammable concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, on mine I just use the screw connector blocks to join the stepper motor to the cable. Don't give any problem that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen
Not
several
easy to
people
unplug, of course.
those kind of things.
Yeah, we've got somebody over here in the chat saying that he's going to go with those screw-on aviation type connectors. I can't find it now, but hey, if it works, it works. And Jim Sinicola said that he used trailer wire connectors. They're waterproof and dustproof. So hey, there's an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Hey, we had him on a few weeks back, and he said he did use trailer wire.
Yep.
Here's a question I see over here. It says, what is the life in hours of a cutter cutting out a Gatton CNC? Is he asking me about the kits, I guess? I
think that's what he's asking you. In other words, how many kits do you get out of a bit?
Well, I get 3 kits out of a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and after about 3 sheets of plywood, I usually swap the bit out.
But you
sometimes even more often than that. I just have to see, because as I'm pulling the parts off and I have a little orbital sander I kind of knock the tabs off with and stuff like that. So as I'm looking at them, if I can tell when I pull one off, if I'm starting to get some extra fuzzies on, I don't really go by, okay, I've cut 3 sheets, so it's time. I just, whenever it's time to change it, by the look of the material, that's when I change it. Because I use different bits. Right now, I've got a CMT bit in there, and I've got 2 more brand new ones. I just put that one in there. In fact, I put that new one in there right before the thing happened. But I got 2 more new CMTs, and then I use some white side, just whatever I look on Amazon, and whatever I can get, whatever's in stock and what I can get at a good price, I go ahead and order like 2 or 3 at a time, and then try to rotate them out until they get so dull that they're not really worth cleaning up anymore.
So you don't try to do any kind of conditioning to them to sharpen or anything. Once you wear them out, you just throw them away.
Well, I do clean them off, like when I see them starting, I can tell they're starting to get dull and getting some crud build up on them. I'll put swap it out, and I'll take the one that I pull out, and I've got some stuff. I should have brought it in here if I'd known you were going to ask me that. But it's called Freud. It's like the same brand of the saw blades, the red saw blades, and it's a stuff you spray to. I don't know what's in it, but you spray it on there, and you use it to clean saw blades and router bits. And you just spray it on there. I usually lay the bits on a rag and soak it down real good, and leave it on there for about 5 minutes, and then pull it off. And most of the junk will wipe right off after you let it soak for a few minutes. So, and Mark was telling me a good tip. I was talking to him, chatting last night. He was talking about oven cleaner.
Yep.
So I may try some of that. And what was the other stuff? Naphtha? Or
the better I get better results. This is going back to my cabinet shop days. We always cleaned our table saw blades and router bits, and even the sanding belts on our 50-inch wide belt sander. We cleaned them with oven cleaner. Take a saw blade and put it inside a trash can liner, shoot it with oven cleaner, flip it over, shoot the other side, close up that bag and let it sit for an hour. Come back and run it under hot water and scrub it with a nylon or brass brush, and it was cleaned up and as good as new. Router bits, I'd throw it in a sandwich bag, same thing, shoot it with some oven cleaner, let it sit and soak that stuff off, and then scrub it with a nylon brush under hot running water, blow it off with a compressor and go. But I've seen people have used things like Simple Green, just whatever you have at hand. If you can clean that gunk off of there, it not only dissipates heat quicker, but it cuts a lot cleaner. And so much so that it can actually, you'd swear you were cutting with a new blade. But I have used a naphtha, but I get the VM&P naphtha at the big box store, and I find that I have to soak a solid carbide bit overnight in it, and it'll loosen it up finally, and I can scrub it up with a nylon brush. But oven cleaner works in about an hour or less. I mean, and you can see it starting to melt that stuff off as you're spraying the oven cleaner on it.
I've had good lacquer thinner.
Yeah, I haven't tried lacquer thinner. I'll give it a shot.
It works real good on it.
Yep.
Yeah, there's probably quite a few things that work really when you think about it, because you just need something that'll kind of eat away at the crud that's on there.
Yeah, lacquer thinner is like one of it. A naphtha is too. Both of those are really, really strong solvents. You can use a lacquer thinner to clean off contact cement, and contact cement, let me tell you, that stuff, once it gets dried, it's hard to get off, but it'll eat contact cement up. So,
oh, it will. It will. Got a question in the chat here about, can you sharpen a CNC bit? Yes, you can. To be honest with you, if I was going to sharpen them, I would send them out. I mean, check with your local tool supply shops or local cabinet shops and ask who sharpens router bits in the area. I know right here locally, I can send a router bit in and have it sharpened for $5. And it doesn't matter what size or shape it is. And it's worth it. You know?
And the sharpening, I think kind of the same rule of thumb for saw blades is, if you're buying a super cheap, bit or blade, you're probably not going to go have it sharpened. But if you're paying for a quality bit,
yes,
there's plenty on there to sharpen.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
And my rule of thumb, generally speaking, when I'm talking about sending something out to have it sharpened, is once I get up to half the replacement cost, I don't bother sharpening it. I just buy a new one. So if it's a $50 bit, by the time I've sharpened it, 5 times, get up to half of its replacement cost, I don't bother sharpening again. I just go ahead and get another one.
So the thing you have to be concerned with, though, is sharpening for like a bit like that is you've got a known diameter of that bit, and if it's been sharpened, you might, if you're trying to do some precision work, you can cause some issues there.
Yeah,
you can.
And getting back to what David originally asked me, I don't pay what I think is a whole lot for bits. Other people might think it's a lot, but I don't. But I think those CMT bits that I bought, I think I paid less than $20 a piece for those. And I'm getting my money's worth out of them. So when they finally get so dull that I don't want to put it back in there to cut these plywood kits, I probably won't throw them away. I'll put them in a different pile because they might still work if I'm cutting HDPE or something like that. And if I try them and I find out that they're even too dull for that, then I usually just toss them. I'm not into the sharpening and all that stuff because, like Mike said, unless you send them out and have somebody professional do it, and then it's going to cost you, to send them and whatever they charge and shipping back and all that. To me, it's not worth it, because I'm not spending $50 for a bit.
Right, and you do have to weigh that. I mean, I'll send a $200 Freud blade out to be sharpened, but if I paid $9.95 for it at Home Depot, I'm not going to worry about it. And the $20 Bosch bits that I use for as end mills, I'll go down and I'll get another one for $20 before I'll send it off to have it sharpened because it's just not worth it. But if you've got something that's expensive and you want to get it sharpened, yeah, it can be done. But you know, it's kind of false economy to send a $4 bit out for $6 to have it sharpened. So, you know.
Yeah, I did a video on sharpening the bits, but not the spiral cut bits, of course. The ones with the brazed on tungsten carbide bits. Yeah, they're easy enough to sharpen up at home, flatten them off, and yeah, they cut a lot better once they've been touched up.
Right, and most of the sharpening services nowadays can tell you how much they've taken off, and even mic that bit for you and tell you what the diameter is. Because I've seen a couple of comments, every time you sharpen a bit, you remove a little bit off of the diameter. Yes, you do, but most sharpening shops now are using computer-controlled machinery for sharpening. Not all of them. There's still a few mom and pops.
When you do use that small of amount off the diameter of the bit, that's where you the D values come in handy on programs.
Right.
But then again, I don't think what we use as far as V-Carve has anything like that. But that's how the machine shops usually take care of that. Just enter a D value.
And a few thousandths of an inch isn't really going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference unless you're really, really getting super precise. Because you got to remember,
not in what we're doing.
Yes, exactly. Because wood moves. I mean, it's going to swell that 10 thousandths with the next change in humidity. So,
yeah, the only way I could see it making a big difference is if you were doing a precision pocket hole or something to join a couple of pieces. If you're doing carving, you're never in a million years going to know a few thousandths of an inch.
Exactly. But if you're milling metal, then that's an entirely different subject. You know?
Correct.
So,
hey, Dave.
Yes,
can
sir.
I tell my story about the USB and the pennant?
You say you want to tell a story?
Yeah, the story about the USB with the pendant that we use to move the router around. Remember?
Oh.
Okay. Refresh my memory.
Okay. All right, guys. Since he don't know, I'll tell the story anyway. Here about a few months ago, well, it's been within a month or so, I decided I had on my USB on my computer, I have 2 ports on the right and 1 on the left on my laptop. Well, the left side of the computer faces the machine and the box and everything for the CNC. So I decided I was going to use a USB port and put it into the one on the left and just put the pendant and the UCNC all on one USB port and go to the machine. And then I wouldn't have to have a cord run over here where my mouse was on the right-hand side on the computer table. So I put it all in, and I did one thing, cut it out, and it seemed to be all right. It wasn't any problem. But on the second time I tried to use it, it started acting funny. The way I say it is it was wigging out, and I'm looking at it going like, what in the world's going on? The pendant reacted funny when I tried to move it and do the jog a little bit different. If I did the jog fast, it would move slow, or it would move half the speed it was at fast. It was just doing all kind of crazy things, and I'm going like, what in the world is happening here? To the point that I actually set the pendant down. I was looking at the computer, trying to do a few things on the computer, and the darn thing started moving on its own without me touching anything. And so now I'm really trying to figure out what's going on. And the only thing that I could base it on was, and I scratched my head for a while, it even messed with Mach 3. I had to close Mach 3 totally out and restart it back up again, and it still started messing up. But anyway, back to a long story short, the only thing I could figure out was that USB hub that I was using. Well, people said, well, it needs to be a 3.0 or whatever. It needs to be a powered USB hub. I put a powered USB hub on it. I tried everything I could try. It did not work. So for some reason, when you're trying to run that UC100 and that pennant, where you can move your machine off of one USB port, there's a conflict. And people have to understand, even those are USB ports. Each port has its own set of parameters as far as switches or whatever the computer used. I don't remember the exact lingo I'm trying to think of. But anyway, for that port. So when I was trying to tie both of those things going to the control box through one USB port, it would not work. It messed with it. I had to take them off the hub, put them in separate USB ports like I had them in the first time, and then it went back to working okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd actually forgot about that, Russ, because that's been a while. I'd actually forgotten you had the problem with that.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months.
Yeah. And also, while we're talking about that, I noticed, we're talking about troubleshooting tips and stuff, but somebody on Facebook the other day was asking, I guess they had a laptop and it didn't have a parallel port. So, they were asking about how to do it. And I noticed 5 or 6 people jumped in there and mentioned the UC100. And I would have to say that, that's a good way to go. There may be a cheaper option out there. I don't know. But I know I have 2 of those UC100s. I use them on 2 different machines and I've never had a problem. So another potential thing would be the smooth stepper in either a USB or a Ethernet. I've had the Ethernet, that worked fine. I just found that the UC100 was a little easier to set up and use, so I stuck with that. So if that's not really a troubleshooting tip, but that's just a tip on how to get around the no parallel port issue. What do we got, Mark? We got some more questions over there. I saw some scrolling by and I was waiting for you to ask them.
Well, there's a couple of questions that are kind of off the topic. If that's, if you're ready for them.
I have something that I've probably made every mistake in the book making my machine. I rank beginner and going through everything. But one issue that I finally figured out what the problem was is when I cut my, I've gone blank, the screws, I cut them 48 inches, just like the plan said. But when I put them together, everything went together. But after about a month, all of a sudden, everything started going haywire. And what I found out was that screw was actually too short. And it had come and jammed into the end and wasn't turning at all. And I couldn't get it in there because it was really too short. So I ended up, I think I sent you a picture of it, Dave, back when I did it, is I put another piece of wood that I cut on the inside of the end piece so that it had something to grab onto. So if you're building these things, be sure not to cut your screws until you get everything put together and make sure they're long enough, because I, of course, did it wrong. But it all works now once I got it all straightened out.
Yeah, when cutting lead screws, the old adage, measure twice, cut once, comes into
Well,
play.
I measured twice. It was 48 inches, but unfortunately, I needed about 48 and a half inches. So, yeah.
Yeah, usually when I'm doing one for the first time, if I'm changing from, changing the plans on the fly, I'll go ahead and put a coupler on the motor and mount that motor with just a couple of screws to the mount, and then I'll measure from the back of the other bearing support up to where that split is in the coupling, and then that's how I know how long I need to cut the lead screw. And if it, if it hangs through the bearing a little bit, that's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. A little bit long is fine, but a little bit short is not a good thing.
Wow.
One of the things I'd say about troubleshooting is usually assume that you only have one fault at a time, and just concentrate, try one thing at a time, and don't hop about from one thing to another. Work out what, as Mark said earlier, what could it be, check that, and if it's not that, move on to something else. Don't go over here and then rush over here and try this, and change things all over the place. Don't go changing settings in Mach 3. If it was working before, it'll be working now. It's unlikely that that's your problem, you know.
That's an excellent point, Peter, because if you're running your machine and you've been running it for weeks and it's run fine and you have no problems, then all of a sudden you change something and now it's not working. Well, don't go back and look at the regular stuff. Think about what you just changed. If it was working before you changed something and now it's not working, it's probably, maybe you changed something and you put the decimal point in the wrong place, or, you know, who knows what it could be. But always start with the very simplest things first.
Right. But and Peter's point is well taken. If your CNC has been running just fine and all of a sudden it doesn't work and you haven't made any changes to any of the software, it's probably not a software problem. Because software settings, I mean, I'm not a computer expert, but I've been using them for a year, for long enough to know that software settings don't change themselves. So if you didn't have a problem with Mach 3 yesterday, you probably don't have one today if you didn't change anything.
The only thing I will add to that, Mark, is in some cases, and I know Peter's talked about this in his videos, is there are some things that when you go to change them, you may think you saved them, but you didn't.
Right.
So you also have to be aware of that. If you go to change a setting and you have to hit apply before you hit OK, and you just hit OK and go out, it may still have the same old number in there. So you gotta think about that as well.
Yes, that's true. You're absolutely right on that one. In fact, there's a little thing in Mach 3 that a lot of people forget about. And if you don't mind, I'll do a screen share real quick. And show you what I'm talking about. Let's see, screen share, and withdraw that. If you get over here into the configuration menu in Mach 3 and you've changed something in your motor tuning, your configuration, what have you, look down at the bottom, right here on the very bottom, save settings. There's a lot of people that will make a change up here in motor tuning or ports and pins or do whatever, and then they don't come down and save the settings here. Well, if you make a change in motor tuning and go over here and hit OK, you have saved it for this session in Mach 3, and that's it. When you shut down Mach 3 and start it up, it's going to go back to the way it was before you made that change. You will have to go down here and hit Save Settings. That's what writes it to the file on your computer and makes that change permanent. So,
Yeah.
and I know this because I didn't do it a couple of times.
That's how we learn stuff, is because we screw up and do it the wrong way and then have to figure it out. But another thing I would suggest too, especially for the new folks that are first getting their machine going, take a screenshot of those screens. Once you get everything set and it's all running correctly, save the settings like Mark said, but also, save those screenshots. Because, there might be something about your machine, I have the screenshots on my website, but there might be something that you had to set a little bit different for your machine. And after you've run it for a while, if you're like me, you're not going to remember what it was. It's easy to pull up that picture and look at it and go, oh yeah, that's what it is. I'm off a little bit here. So it doesn't hurt to save the screenshots.
No, it doesn't.
Back it up as well.
Yep, and I was just going to suggest you head over to Peter Pozuelo's YouTube channel, CNC Nuts, and do what he said. Back up. You got 2 excellent videos on how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Another thing as well. Oh, sorry, Russ.
Oh, that's just somewhere over there in the questions. I don't remember the guy's name, but I read it. But he was asking about how often do you lube or do you lube your lead screws? And I thought that was a pretty important question. So that he had.
For me, about once every 10 years. No, I've like I said, usually when I'm building the machine, I'm first putting it together. When I finally got every nut fastened and I'm firing it up the thing for the first time and I'm moving, jogging it back and forth, I usually will, put a dab somewhere on the lead screws and run everything back and forth so it kind of smears that lithium grease throughout the lead screw. And usually after that, I'm sorry, I just don't ever put any on there. It seems to work for a long, long, long time after that. So, but it just depends on the environment. If you're, it depends on what you got going on. If you're one of those people that might do metal work as well as woodworking in the same shop, and you do welding or grinding and you get all that metal dust, yeah, you want to clean them a lot more often than I do, I guarantee you. It just depends on the environment. But as far as the maintenance on the lead screws, there's not a whole lot to do. Just kind of check them, make sure they're clean, wipe them off, and there's just not a whole lot to do unless your shop's just really, really filthy, I guess. So
yeah, I was going to say, I think a good preventative maintenance thing is to use some form of dust collection. Because just cutting down that dust can make a big difference.
For some reason, you're locked on me, and I really wish you wouldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I locked it on. I locked it on you when you were doing the screen share, and I forgot to take it off. And I stare right at it and don't even think about it.
I gotta scratch my nose, and nobody wants to see that.
You just had a big increase in thumbs up, though.
Okay. All right. Well, we got any more? Let's see if we can get through these questions real quick, Mark, because we've got just a few minutes left, and we still got to go over the tiling.
Well, we can do that another day if you'd like. I'm fine with that. There are just two questions here that are completely off the subject. Harry Vaughn Sr. has asked 2 or 3 times now, are you ever going to make and sell a 4x8 GarageWorks CNC?
Simple answer, no.
Okay.
And the reason is, I'm building these things out of my garage here. I don't have room to do 4x8. I don't have room to store 4x8 parts, and I am too damn old to haul crates, that are that freaking heavy. It's all I can do to tote the 4x4 crates around. If anybody's got a 4x4 from me, you know how heavy those, because it comes in like 3 crates. I have to split it up just so I can be able to move it around on a hand truck. Russ Meadows knows.
I'll testify to that.
He knows how heavy they are. And I'm just too old. I'm not going to work that hard. And the other thing is, Harry, there's not that big a market for, or there wouldn't be that big a market for a 4x8 that I built. Yeah, I could probably build one that, bolts together like the other GarageWorks CNCs and sell them cheaper and all that. But the people just don't have the space for a 4x8. Not everybody does. So there wouldn't be that big a market. The smaller machines have always seemed to sell better, and that's what I kind of stick to, something that I can build and have parts. And I mean, if you guys can see my garage now, some of you have been over here. Mike's been over here. He knows what my garage looks like. It's
plenty of room.
Yeah. I keep a path where I can get in and out, when I'm going out to the mailbox or something. That's about it, because it's tight in there with all the stuff, and it's even more crowded since you were here, Mike. So with more stuff. So okay. Any other questions over there, Mark?
Yeah, we have a question here from Jim Johnson, and he says, recently the Z on my GarageWorks CNC has not been cutting the correct depth. I was pocketing some letters at 0.092, but it cut them at 0.146. I've checked all the connectors and lead nut, and all were tight. Any suggestions?
Well, my dog's trying to give us one here. I don't know if y'all can hear him or not.
What Rocky wants, Rocky gets.
Hush, boy. One thing, if you're absolutely positive that your coupler is not slipping, also I'd be curious to know how you're setting up your zero on your Z, because if you're using the paper method like I do, and you're turning it by hand with a crank, it's still possible to turn that thing where you think you're at the top of the material, but really you're a little bit below. It's just that you crank down on that a little bit too tight. And then when you go to cut, it will cut deeper than what you think. So when if you're, you know, again, I don't know if you're using the paper method like I use, or a touch off plate or whatever, but if you're using the paper, you want to make sure when I do it, I'm wiggling that paper the whole time. I'm bringing that down, and then just as it catches and I can't move that paper, that's it. I don't go down any farther. Another thing is too, depending on how big of a blank you're cutting, you may set your zero. And again, I don't know where you're setting it. I always set mine in the middle of the material. But let's say you've got your material clamped down and it's a bigger piece, but your material may be bowed or warped. So maybe you're at the top of the material where you set your zero, but now when you move over here to cut these letters, that material's bowed up, and now it looks like you're cutting deeper than what, you know, because it's only at zero from where you touched it off at.
Right.
You have to really watch your material, try to clamp it. You know, I always try to, if it's bowed, you know, up like this, I try to set the side where I'm pulling the corners down. But even then, it's hard to do, because sometimes you get a piece of material that's just plain not flat, no matter how you clamp it.
Potato chip.
So you know, it's hard unless you're using some kind of adhesive method and stuff like that, where you can get it pulled down. It's sometimes it's hard to get it all the way flat everywhere.
He says he's using an Auto Tool Zero, so evidently he has a touch plate or something.
Okay.
But even with the touch plate, any kind of, if his bed's not 100% flat, or it's got some imperfections in it, or, you know, like you're saying, Dave, if there's any, because even plywood, all the plies in plywood are not 100% all the same dimensions, so you can have some slight imperfections just in plywood.
Yep.
Yeah. Even when I get ready to throw a blank to cut the kits, because I've had that same problem. If I just grab one and throw it up there and I don't pay attention, a lot of times I'm setting my zero in the middle of that piece of plywood, and I didn't realize it, but when I clamp down the corners, it's bowed up in the middle. So now I'm really higher, so when it goes over here, it's not cutting through all the way. So what I try to do is, before I set the blank up, and I'm, you know, when I say a blank, I'm talking a 48 by 32 piece of plywood, I look down the end of it to try to see which way it's bowing, and then I try to set it so that so that it's cupped up, so that when I put the clamps around the outer edge, I'm pulling that down, and
now,
that helps. But it's still not perfect.
If your table is perfectly straight, you could always do that trick Peter has done in his videos. Is, I believe he took his Z off the table and did it from there. But that's a whole other process you'd have to learn, I guess. Peter knows what I'm talking about, I think. Well, of course he does.
Yeah. I always set my Z when I'm cutting through my material to the tabletop, and then call it the nominal thickness of the material. That way, especially when you're cutting your material through, if you've got holding tabs there, your holding tabs then end up the thickness you set them to, and they actually hold your material. So yeah, I always set mine to the bottom of the. Setting it to the tabletop.
Now, I always get around that, because a lot of the times I'm cutting my stuff and it's unattended, so I definitely don't want a tab breaking loose and ruining a part or something like that. So I put healthy tabs on mine, but then I also, like most of the plywood I get, if I take my calipers and measure it, it measures usually around 0.73, maybe 0.74. Okay, well, when I have everything programmed for that to cut through, I have it go 0.78. So I'm if it's 7.3, I'm 50 thousandths past. But what I do is I make my tabs healthy enough so that if it takes 50 thousandths more off that tab, it's still got plenty there to hold it. So that's how, I get around doing it, because I'm just wanting to throw a blank on there, hit the button, and go.
And now, something that he said in that question that I didn't pick up on, and I really, really should have, is that he mentioned specifically it was in cutting pockets. He was trying to cut a pocket to a certain depth, and it cut too deep. My question, and a couple of people have suggested over here in the chat, which is why I bring it up, so folks who watch this tomorrow will see it, is it's possible that the material was a little bit thicker than it was supposed to have been. Or there was a wave in the surface of that material. It's possible surfacing the material might, before cutting that pocket would do it, or making sure your spoil board is nice and flat. If there was something on the spoil board before you clamped your workpiece down, that could also throw it off. Because I know we throw around the phrase 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch all the time, but if you're going down to Home Depot or Lowe's and you're buying the oak solid stock down there, when you bring it home, measure it. It's not 3/4 of an inch, and 3/4 inch plywood is not 3/4 of an inch. Solid stock is, generally speaking, closer to 13/16. So
even your other woods are not 3/4 of an inch. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, I don't know of anything in there that's actually 3/4 of an inch if it says it is.
Exactly.
I run into that problem all the time.
Now, if they want to do a pocket and it's that close of a tolerance, one thing they can do is just leave it like 50 thousandths above and then measure each pocket and program for each one of the pockets the difference that they're getting, and then rerun the program, not rerun the program necessarily, but run a program for each, since they already know the difference from the face of the pocket per se to the bottom.
Right.
But I mean, that's an easy fix, I would say, if it's that close of a tolerance that they're trying to hit.
Right. Right.
Yeah, when pocketing, I always set the cutter to the surface of the material. Otherwise, you've got no way of accurately getting setting the cutter off the bottom of the material will not give you an accurate pocket depth.
Right.
You need to set it to the top of the material. And I always use a light. Now I just put a little torch behind the cutter and slowly bring it down to the surface of the material, because light's pretty thin and can sneak through, and you can see exactly when it's touching that material. Really accurate way of setting a cutter.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it, Peter. I'm gonna shut my mic off here a second and turn my camera off so I can let my dumb dog out, because he's getting impatient here. So y'all carry on with me for about 2 minutes.
What Rocky wants, Rocky gets. And another thing to add to that, Peter, is what I was referring to was if the surface that you're cutting that pocket into isn't a nice flat surface, variations in the surface that you're cutting into can cause that as well. If you've set your zero over at one corner of a piece of work material, but up in the center there's a little bit of a bow. So, okay, he's now saying if I rerun the program, it goes deeper. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know
Sounds
about that.
like something's slipping. One thing I've actually had in the past is cutters slipping in the collet, especially spiral bits. They can actually pull themselves deeper into the material by their very nature, and then they cut a lot deeper than they should do. So that's something to check that the collet's actually holding that bit properly.
Excellent
that's
point.
Good point, Peter. You definitely have to make sure you get that bit in there good and tight.
And another little quick tip, do not use the spindle lock on the router. Use 2 wrenches. He said earlier he's using a Porter Cable 892. That's the same router I'm using. If you're using that spindle lock, don't use it. Use 2 wrenches. I know they're 1/8 inch and 1/8, but use 2 wrenches.
Yeah, doesn't an 892 come with 2 wrenches?
You know what? I don't remember. I've got 2 inch and 1/8 wrenches, so that's what I use.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many wrenches it came with.
Okay,
Cheap like me. If you're cheap like me, just buy a double-ended wrench and cut it in half. You get get the ring spanner at one end and the open-ended at the other.
Exactly.
Normally, Porter Cable does sell their units with 2 wrenches.
I don't remember if it came with 1 or 2.
I just got one. I don't remember. Don't feel
I
bad.
just got one. It came with 2.
There you go.
There you go. We're going to go with 2. Okay, we got any more questions over there? We're starting to run over just a little bit here.
Lyle Foyt is asking, I would imagine that spiral bits could pull with enough downward pressure to lose steps on a Z. That's not been my experience, Lyle. I use a lot of downcut. I use my downcut spiral a lot. You got to figure it's cutting the wood. It's not pulling the bit down into it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had the issue with that. Okay. Anything else?
Do you need to use a copper wire if you use a vacuum for your dust shoe collector? If you mean grounding your hose, I did. Not everybody does it. I do. I did, just to help get rid of static electricity.
If it makes you sleep better at night, go ahead and do it.
It took me 2 minutes. So
yeah.
Depends on how much you like getting a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a bunch of people watching here still. We're
Yep.
About 7 over. But we haven't talked about the tiling. I haven't seen anybody ask about that over there, but I hate to put it off till next week in case there's somebody that's watching tonight because they knew we were going to talk about that. Is that?
They'll be back next week.
We'll probably go a half hour over if we do, Dave. I mean, it's entirely up to you. I'm ready to go, but
okay. Well, if anybody's over there in the chat and they want to see tiling tonight, put it on there. And I wanted to talk about a couple other things before we get to that, if we get to that. Mm-hmm. One, I had mentioned a while back. Of course, we got the Christmas challenge going on, started yesterday. So I hope everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to do for their Christmas themed CNC project, and hope they're planning on entering a video on that. But I mentioned that, we're going to run the contest up through Christmas Eve for the Christmas challenge. So we're going to go from Black Friday to Christmas Eve. And then I mentioned that we probably wouldn't have a show because I think, if I remember right, Christmas Eve is on a Saturday and New Year's Eve is on a Saturday as well. So I'm thinking we probably won't do a show, Christmas Eve, because I'm sure everybody's got something way better to do than watch this. And the New Year's Eve show, I kind of thought I would just ask the folks watching. We've got like 88 people watching. Put over there in the chat, if you think you'd want us, I don't know, because we come on at 9, you still have time to party. I don't know if anybody want to tune into a show or not. If we don't get a lot of interest, I won't worry about having one. But
I'm an old person. I don't do anything on New Year's, so I'll be here.
Well, I don't either. Not. Yeah, Mike likes to party. We figured that, Mike. So. Okay, we got one guy says he would watch. So I don't know. We'll see. And maybe I'll post something on Facebook, see what kind of response. Maybe we'll do a show. We'll come up with some kind of topic.
Okay, you got 2 people with a New Year's show.
Okay.
I'll be home too old and too tired to party. All right, y'all. You're dating yourselves here.
Yeah. Well, I don't party much anymore. This is about the most partying I do is what you're seeing right now. So, okay, so we'll see. We'll maybe do a New Year's Eve show then. We'll see.
Maybe we could have Russ do a countdown and drop an apple out of his beard or something.
I'm actually probably going to have a New Year's show.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I don't know if I'll carry mine all the way to midnight though or not.
Yeah.
Trust
Well,
me.
I'm not planning on going till midnight.
Yeah.
Although some of our hangouts have.
Yeah. My
Beyond that,
my 1 year anniversary show went for 3 hours and 16 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it looks like there's quite a few people that watch. So
Okay.
maybe we'll do that. We'll have to come up with some kind of topic suitable for a New Year's Eve show then. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about real quick, I guess I don't see anybody say anything about the tiling. Maybe we'll save that for next week.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we've got Bruce Lund says, please do cover the tiling next week. Just got desktop V-Carve. I'll give you a little pro tip here, Bruce. Get over there and subscribe to Peter Pasuelo's channel, CNC Nuts with a Z. He has an excellent video on how to cut a piece that's too long for your CNC bed. That's part of tiling. So that's pro tip number one.
Oh, I hate to, I've been having a brain fart here, but something just popped into my head.
Uh-oh.
About the cutting too deep thing. You also have to remember when you bring that down and you touch that material. And if you're doing it where you cut your drive box off and you're manually bringing it down. Well, no, he probably isn't because he said he was using a touch plate, I guess.
Yeah.
I was just going to remind everybody that when you bring it down and, you hit 0 or reference all home in Mach 3, and then you go to raise that up, if you bump that and raise it up and go, oh, I forgot to turn the dry box on. Now that throws everything off. If you go back and turn it on, because it's not where it's not where it thinks it is. So, and it will go plowing into the thing if you've raised it up very high too. So, don't ask me how I know that. But anyway, but that's probably not what's happening with him because he said he was using a touch plate. So. Okay, so one last thing I did want to mention too, this GarageWorks CNC giveaway. Here we are. We've made it through Halloween, made it through Thanksgiving, and December will be right around the corner here. Because what's today, like 25th or 6th, something like that.
Yes.
So just a few more days, but we'll start taking entries. I've already had people asking about the thing, and I haven't done anything on the website yet but I will have it up there by December 1st. Be taking entries for that. We're giving away a 36 by 24 GarageWorks CNC.
Ooh.
Dry box, stepper motors, lead screws, Acme nuts, the whole 9 yards. So, and as I mentioned in one of my videos, I've decided to go ahead and make it where the guys in Canada can enter as well. I'll foot the bill for the shipping just because I'm a nice guy to anywhere in the continental U.S. and Canada. But, if you are in Canada, what happens once it gets up there with the customs and all that, that's on you. So think about that before you put an entry in. I don't mind paying the shipping, but I'm not paying you custom taxes and all that stuff. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. I guess we're done with questions. I don't see anything else going by there. All right. I guess we're going to put this one in the books then. Appreciate all you guys hanging around, man. We've had like 90 some people hanging around tonight. I appreciate it. If you would, make sure you hit the thumbs up on the way out. We've got quite a few now, but appreciate if you do that on your way out. And I want to thank Becca, David, Juan, Mark, Mike, Peter, Russ, and Tommy G also snuck in here too. So thanks, Tommy, for popping in here. And I guess we're going to call it a night. We'll see y'all next week. Everybody take care and have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend, y'all. Don't
Y'all
forget to
have
hit
a good
that
one.
like button on the way out.
Good night.